if Democrats were serious about addressing the issue, they would admit that many of the things that they've been pushing for, bail reform, I mean, go down the whole list, all these things, they have not made us safer. They have made things less safe, and more people have been the victims of violent crime, have been raped, have been murdered. That has happened because of their stupid ideas.
Yes.
And it happens so that people like Nancy Pelosi, who live in $15 million mansions in the Bay Area with security everywhere, can feel good about themselves.
Want to share a story with many of you out there that is awful. We're the large audience in Memphis, and this story has spread well beyond Memphis because, unfortunately, I believe it's emblematic of the crime wave that we are living amidst in so many different parts of the country right now. So a young mom of two named Eliza Fletcher went for a jog. She was training for marathons. She did early morning jogs because she wanted to be able to, I don't know her full routine, but I do have a wife who is trained for marathons. And in the South, in the summer in particular, it is super hot. And if you have a job and you have young children, sometimes you have to get up really early in the morning to be able to get in long runs outdoors. So this mom of two, school teacher in the Memphis area, young kids, she's out for a jog. It's 4:30 in the morning. She is by the University of Memphis's campus, and she is attacked and assaulted by a man who kidnaps and kills her. The man who kidnapped and killed her was out of jail early. He did not fulfill the full terms of his sentence in the state of Tennessee that would have required him to still be in jail, where he had previously kidnapped a man, a lawyer in Memphis, put him in the trunk, and drove that man around, requiring him to withdraw money from a variety of ATM machines until that man was able to escape. He was released from prison in November of 2020, and he's been charged with first-degree murder. This man has, for killing this young mother of two. Buck, I think one reason why this story, again, her name is Eliza Fletcher. I would encourage you guys, Google her. She appears to have been a fantastic mother, wife, school teacher, a ray of sunshine in the world in which she lived. And I think one reason, Buck, this is connecting with so many people viscerally, and I know many of you out there have been following this story. They've been looking for her body. They've been trying to figure out what happened to her, is because it is a perfect approximation of a random act of violence that should have never been able to be perpetrated against anyone. A young mom is out for a jog, training for a marathon, two young kids, school teacher, husband back home. Early in the morning, she's trying to fit in all the things in her life, and she is attacked and brutally murdered in a totally senseless and random act of violence by someone who should have never been on the streets.
There were policy decisions that not only this heinous incident, this heinous crime, but in so many others like it across the country, made this tragedy possible. Democrats have been pushing for early release, pushing for ending mass incarceration. These are decisions that they made based in ideology, based in the sense that the criminal justice system is racist, that the best way to address what they claim is the racism of the system is to lower prosecution rates, lower incarceration terms, let people out earlier, and effectively side with criminals as much as possible in the criminal justice system. That is a shift that has been occurring now for years. In the last couple of years, we have seen the numbers reflect what that actually means. I saw an ad over the weekend. I'm trying to remember what group put it out, but it went viral. It got a lot of attention, Clay. And it was just showing all of the crime that's been occurring in cities across the country in broad daylight. I mean, really brazen, awful, violent crime going on in cities across the country. And where do you see Democrats focusing more attention? Donald Trump's document habits or stopping crime in major cities that are at all-time highs? Look at what's going on in Seattle. I think Seattle just is on track for its most violent year ever. Portland is on track for its most violent year ever. Philadelphia is on track for its most violent year ever. This means hundreds and hundreds of people killed beyond what had been the case in an average year in these cities, because Democrats feel better about themselves. They feel anti-racist by pushing these policies. They think they're being heroes and they're pushing for civil rights or whatever by limiting the terms that people serve for violent crimes, by undermining the will of state legislatures in many places. And how many of these tragedies do we have to go through before people realize if they don't change the system, we will have more of this, more of these horrible incidents, more of these. It's the person who is assaulted or in this case killed after being kidnapped. It's also the family that's shattered. I mean, think for all the shootings that occur in a place, let's say Philadelphia, where they're going to have their worst year ever for murders. It's going to be hundreds of murders. It's thousands and thousands of people whose lives are shattered. It's businesses on the street where a shooting occurs, let's say, where a drive-by occurs, that knows that they have to leave the neighborhood. They have to close it down. It's the urban decay that results. And what do Democrats do when we say, we need to back police, we need to crack down? You know what they do? They sneer and say that's racist. I think it's racist to leave minority communities to suffer from the idiotic Democrat policies and not to recognize, as I said, Clay, in New York City, they can break it down. 5,000 people in New York, give or take, are the repeat violent offenders. There are 2 million black residents of New York City.
Yep.
So do we want to just keep the 99.9% safe, or do we want to focus in on disparate impact and what makes social justice warriors feel good about themselves?
Arguing that you're too nice to criminals is a luxury of a low-crime environment, and we are not in a low-crime environment. And I know there are so many moms out there that saw this story and what happened to this young mom and thought, that could have been me. I'm up early running in my neighborhood. At any point, someone can pull off on the side of the road and grab me like happened to this poor mom, Eliza Fletcher. I do want to mention the Speaker of the Tennessee House reached out to me about this case because it has resonated certainly around the nation, but in the state of Tennessee in a major way. And Speaker Cameron Sexton, I'm going to try to get him on maybe to talk about this case later this week, Buck, because I do think there's a lot of interest. He said this year we passed 100% sentencing for violent criminals in Tennessee. This guy would have still been in jail under the truth in sentencing bill that had been pushed. This mom would still be alive. How many people out there are like Eliza Fletcher, Buck? Thousands, maybe even tens of thousands now of people who would be alive if the violent criminals who took their lives had been kept behind bars. The cops know, Buck. You just mentioned it. They know who the bad guys are. We've got to let them go after the bad guys. And when we catch them, we got to put them away behind bars and we got to throw away the damn key. This being concerned about being too mean to criminals business, it is inexcusable. This defund the police argument, it is indefensible. And I'm sick of there being tens of thousands of Eliza Fletchers all over this country, 100% honest, 100% did nothing wrong, victims of senseless violence. And as you mentioned, Buck, the families will never recover from this. Never will. These little boys who grow up without their mom, husband, all of her family, the kids that she would have taught in school and raised up to be better, they will never recover from this loss. And it should have never happened. There is blood on the hands of anyone who allowed this to occur and continues to allow it.
Yeah, I mean, if Democrats were serious about addressing the issue, they would admit that many of the things that they've been pushing for, bail reform, go down the whole list, all these things, they have not made us safer. They have made things less safe. And more people have been the victims of violent crime, have been raped, have been murdered. That has happened because of their stupid ideas.
Yes.
And it happens so that people like Nancy Pelosi, who live in $15 million mansions in the Bay Area with security everywhere, can feel good about themselves. For the rest of us, there needs to be the reckoning you and I have talked about so much. On the crime issue alone, Democrats deserve to lose their jobs in elected office, to lose the power that they accrued in 2020 while the country was under duress from the BLM riots that they were supporting, by the way, and have still never condemned and never said, yeah, maybe that was a little too far. In fact, as we know, that led directly to the massive increase in murders, assaults, burglaries, thefts, you name it, that we've been living through in this country for the last 2 years. Undermining cops became a way for Democrats to pander to their base, and they did it as a party. They've never backed down from it.
Eliza Fletcher would still be alive if your politicians did their job and kept violent criminals behind bars. And she is emblematic of what is occurring far too often all over this country. Crime completely out of control. We got to put people behind bars and let the good guys, that is the cops, lock up the bad guys and support them to do so, period.